it over to really the guy who's the brains behind this whole operation, who basically runs this organization. His name's Paul McCosco. He keeps me pointed and organized and in the right direction. So, Paul, you want to kick it off, buddy?
Yeah, thanks for that awesome introduction. I don't know if I'm worthy of the term brains of the organization, but it is an honor to work with you, and I appreciate that. And it's an honor to be here with all of you today, too. Welcome to the Art of Work-Life Balance. We are truly excited about today's presentation, and we're happy that you've taken some time out of your schedule to join us today in really achieving a first step in achieving a good relationship between work and life and bringing more balance to our life. I think that's something that we all strive for. I know that's something I desperately seek in my life, and sometimes I've gotten it right, other times have not, but every time I've learned something in the middle, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Thank you for taking the time to invest in yourself and become a better version of yourself too. That's something that Bill and I talk about a lot. And a big thank you to everyone who's going to watch this recording later on. And we're excited that you're going to join us later on too. So sometimes it feels like balance may be impossible, but hopefully by the end of this webinar, by the end of this hour together, you'll recognize that there are some simple steps that you can take to begin prioritizing your life in terms of what matters most and what brings ultimate fulfillment to you. In fact, Bill and I, we want to make a couple promises to you right off the top today. By the end of our hour together, you will have learned 5 steps to begin bringing a greater level of balance to your life, as well as learning 2 solid benefits to living a more balanced life. So maybe you're like me, and maybe you've noticed that the world is changing a little bit. Did you know that balance in today's world is more important than ever? In fact, finding balance in a post-COVID world is so difficult. So how many people are parents? If you've got your chat on, type I'm a parent. Yeah, I want to see how many parents are out there. Anybody? Love it. Yes, Jen's a parent. I know I'm a parent. Bill's a parent. Carrie's a parent. Okay, so I'm speaking to you parents now. How many people have had to learn how to work in school from home in this last year? That was insane, wasn't it? We've all seen the memes of how people have tried to find balance from working from home. I loved this one. It says, exceptions in case of emergency. Am I on fire and I don't know it? Are you on fire and I'm the only one who can put this out? I mean, this is like real life right now. People are trying to stay focused. They're trying to be all in on their jobs and they're trying to be all in on home. And it's been a difficult road. And so we thought, why not now to bring this information out? It's so much relevance to where we're at. Statistically speaking, check this out. According to the Pew Research Council, 20% of people worked from home prior to COVID-19. That's 1 in every 5 worker worked at home prior to COVID. Now, at this point in time, 71% of people are currently working from home. And now what they're estimating as you fast forward into the future, 54% of people prefer to work from home once the COVID-19 pandemic ends. And I don't know what that says to you, but to me, it says that more people are going to try to figure out how to work from home, which means that this difficult juggling that we're trying to figure out is going to become even more complicated because we're going to be trying to work from home more. How do we do that well? That's what we're going to tackle today. So if that's what the statistics say, we've got this little microcosm of the world with us today. I want to hear from y'all. Who here is currently working from home? If you're working from home right now, type me in the chat. I can tell BJ is not going to type me in the chat right now. Awesome. Carrie, Jen, Sean, working from home. Absolutely.
Hey, Sean, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah. So Mark, I'd say more than 50% of us right now are working from home. That's fascinating. That totally lines up with the statistics as well. So let's take that a step further. How does working from home differ from working in the office or in your business? Anybody want to speak to how they've seen work change as they've started working from home? You can just speak up. You don't need to type it in the chat, but I'd love to hear what's different about working from home than working in the office for you.
Very interrupt driven.
Tons of interruptions. Absolutely. I can second that. Anything else? Anybody else?
And this is Carrie. Oh,
Here.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I'm actually like, I don't leave my computer. I don't break like I did at work. I don't
Ah.
like I did at work. I don't, if somebody has a meeting and I'm done at 3:30 and they have it at 4 or 4:30, I'm sure I'll jump on when I'd be gone. They're getting a lot more out of me. That's for sure.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say that, Carrie, just actually working a lot more and a lot harder because of
Yes.
that.
That's why I need this. I need to get up. I need to take a break. I need to call it quits at the end of the day. Help.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. And I think I never appreciated that buffer of driving to work and driving home, which helped reset my mind as I do now. You know what I mean? Lauren, were you going to say something to an ad?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a lot more like virtual meetings. You can't just pop over to someone's desk or catch someone on a way to a meeting to kind of talk about things. So it's just like jam-packed full days of just virtual meetings back to back to back.
Wow. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, just the complete exhaustion from, it's the Zoom exhaustion or, the Microsoft Teams exhaustion, just kind of being in that virtual meeting space all day.
Welcome to everybody who's still joining us. John, it's good to see you too, buddy. We're talking about some of the challenges that we've seen from working from home and how does work from home differ from working in the office or in your business? John, are you working from home right now? I think
You're on mute, brother.
I saw you nodding, so yes.
Sorry. Yep. Sorry.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I've been working from home for the last year or so, and so yeah, it's been quite a transition. We have 2 young kids as well. Fortunately, they're back at daycare and able to get back at school here recently. But yeah, for several months it was parenting and working remotely, so that was quite an adjustment from the office life prior to that.
Well, for those of you, we have some folks that are from home, some people not from home. The bigger question here, let's look at this third question. We'll have everybody kind of throw in on this. So you just kind of know a baseline from where we're starting today. Whether you work from home or from the office or at work, what is the most challenging aspect of maintaining a work-life balance for you? I think one of the things we love about doing these webinars is just really finding out where people are at with some of these topics. We're even figuring out what topics really resonate with people. And this had actually quite a few people registered for it. Not as many that are actually here because of the topic, of course. But type into the chat, what's the most challenging aspect of this for you? Because I hate answering questions that nobody's asking. And if you'd rather just share and talk, I'm cool with that too. Doesn't matter. Walking away from work? Yeah, absolutely. Always feeling like work is there. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So creating that separation, the difficulty in creating separation. Phone's always on. Wow. A lot of common themes here. I'm do everything I want to do at work and home. Gotcha. That's hard. Finding that separation, being in kind of both environments at once. Need more me time. Okay, good. Awesome. Anybody want to speak into any of those things that you typed in? All right, cool. That gives us a good baseline. Let's keep going.
All right, so we've got a lot of meat to cover today. So before we get into the meat of everything, I want to clear the air for everybody, okay? Now, I don't want you to like immediately click off the window and be like, I'm out, this is ridiculous, but there's a dirty secret about balance. And does anybody want to know what that is? Here we go. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Now, before you try to throw rocks at your computer at us, no, I want to talk about what does exist. But first, have you ever tried to find something that wasn't there? How did that make you feel? This past Saturday, my wife and I had a soccer game. My oldest son was at a soccer game and she had to go before me. And so she left, she went to the soccer game, and all of a sudden I get a call from my coach, and it's my wife on my coach's phone. And she's like, "Hey, I left my phone at home. Can you bring it before you come to the game?" Absolutely, honey. I'll go look for it right now. I looked around the house for 20 minutes for my wife's cell phone, called it about 1,000,000 times, couldn't hear it ring. She said it was here at the house. I couldn't find it. My 9-year-old son looks at me. He's like, "Hey, Dad, did you ever just try the Find My Phone app and try to figure out where it was? Just ping her." So after 20 minutes, I pinged her and it was in her trunk at the soccer game. But I remember feeling such frustration because I was looking for something that wasn't there. And I feel like some of these frustrations that we feel with work-life balance, trying to find it, like trying to do something to bring some semblance of balance, can be like trying to find something that isn't there. It doesn't exist. But where does the idea of work-life balance originate? Bill's got some amazing insight in there. So I want to turn it over to him.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm really excited to talk about this, although it's probably going to create a fair amount of cognitive disequilibrium, which I'm totally okay with. But where did this whole thing start? If you look at it historically, it goes back to the 1980s. Okay, what was significant about the 1980s? Well, more than half of all married women joined the workforce. So that was significant. So now we've got this massive shift going on in our culture. And what's the shift? Well, the shift is from a family unit with a breadwinner and a homemaker to one with 2 breadwinners and no homemaker. Now, I know you're a bunch of smart people on the line. Who do you think was left or stuck with the home responsibilities, even though both married partners were working? If you said the wife or the mom, you are absolutely 100% right. So it became this deal where they're women, they were working, but they still had to keep up with all the demands at home. And this started to grow and become an increasingly bigger issue over time. It expanded beyond women to like everybody in the workforce. So look at this statistic here. So the number of articles devoted to work-life balance between 1986 and 1996 were 32. By 2007, there were 1,674 articles devoted to this topic. So we know it's a big issue in people's lives. When you think about balance, let me just throw this question out here because I want to kind of know where you guys are at with it. When you think about balance, what comes to your mind? What is it about balance that's so attractive to you? Talk to me about that. Because it seems like if I could just get that work-life balance, what does that mean? What do you think of when you think about that concept?
Yeah, so Bill, I guess I'd say that it's offsetting the frustrations from the workday, right? So if there's a heavy stress day at work, doing something or finding something that kind of counteracts that, so that going into the next day, you're not still carrying the weight from the previous day, and having that carry over day to day, week to week.
Absolutely, man. That's great. Definitely a theme here. More peace, less stress, deeper satisfaction, less anxiety. These are all phenomenal answers. So I think historically, when people think about balance, they look at it this way. Balance equals enough time for everything and everything done in time, right? It's just like, yeah, I can just make it all work. Well, there's a little problem with that. And the little problem with that is simply that life offers too much. Of all the things that I could do, but there's just not enough time. Of all the things that I could know, but life is too complex. Of all the things that I could have, life offers too much. And we get this idea that balance is somehow finding this magic formula where I can figure out how to get it all done within the allotted time I've been given. And really what that results in is this: it's in our efforts to attend to all things, everything gets shortchanged and nothing gets its due. So in this quest to achieve work-life balance, we end up creating, there's so many people that literally end up creating so much more stress and anxiety, just like some of you have typed in the chat today.
Well, and because there's so much that needs to get done, what is our tendency? We try to go faster and faster and faster to get things done. And it's interesting to note that there are two cardiologists, Meyer Friedman and Ray Rosenman, and they coined a term called hurry sickness, a medical term. It's defined as a malaise in which a person feels chronically short of time. And so they tend to perform every task faster to get frustrated when encountering any kind of delay. The hurry sickness was coined. Yeah. So it's basically saying that what you do is you work faster and harder. And every time you get interrupted, you get more frustrated and more frustrated. And it's just this never-ending cycle of feeling bad about yourself and working harder and getting more frustrated when you're interrupted. And I don't know about you, but that's what happens in my home all the time when I'm trying to do work and my kids interrupt me, or I'm trying to stay focused on something and my wife needs something, or we're trying to manage the household tasks and work is calling. You get frustrated. So John Ortberg, he said this, he said, hurry is not just a disordered schedule, it's a disordered heart. It's a disordered heart. Do you have trouble slowing down and switching off? I would say if you're on this webinar, then you absolutely do. And you're not alone. And to tell you the truth, we're not alone because many things are working against us. And one of those things is our technology. So that thing in your pocket or the thing that's on your table next to you, maybe it's charging just a few feet away because you've used it so much, your smartphone, right? Everybody has one these days. Statistically speaking, only 77% of Americans have a smartphone, but they could be fantastic tools. You've got the answer to almost any question at your fingertips. One of my friends describes it like this. He said, you literally have infinity in front of you at all times. You could talk to anyone, anywhere in the world. And your phone nowadays acts like a million tools in one, thanks to all of these different applications. Unfortunately, about our technology, it makes us accessible to our employers and to our employees around the clock. And because most of us are glued to our phones anyway, it can draw difficult boundaries between work and life. Our laptops are the same thing, right? But let's go back to the phone for a second, because this is like your own personal dopamine dispenser. It allows you to get a hit of those feel-good chemicals whenever you turn it on and see a notification, or someone likes a post, or someone responds to an email that you've been waiting for, right? And we get addicted to checking it, and we get distracted from the world around us. This is another interesting fact about your smartphone. Did you know that in America, 75% of people sleep next to their smartphone, and 90% of people check their smartphone first thing when they wake up in the morning? Now, Bill's raising his hand. I know I've texted Bill first thing in the morning. He gets back to me in record time. So I know that that's true. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's really my alarm clock. That's why I have it next to me. That is a true story.
Because it's a Swiss Army knife of technology.
That's right.
It can do everything. It's your calculator, it's your alarm clock. So this is a fun fact and just an added bonus. Did you know that in America, 25% of American couples sleep in separate beds? So what that means is, statistically speaking, you have as much chance of waking up next to your smartphone as your spouse in America. We're literally married to our phones. So
that's funny.
That's a sad statement right there. Not only that, but our smartphones is primarily how we access social media. Did you know that we spend 705 hours on social media every single year? We're constantly addicted to technology. I hate Sunday morning at 9:15. And I'll tell you why. I used to get really excited because I think I would be at church service and someone would be texting me. But at 9:15 in the morning on Sundays is when it says, this is your weekly average for how much you've used your smartphone from last week. I'm like, like really? 4.5 hours every day? Like, that's pretty embarrassing. But anyway, with all of that, our attention spans are shrinking because we're constantly stimulated. Did you know that our attention span prior to the iPhone's invention in 2000 was 12 seconds? And in 2015, it went down to 8 seconds is our average attention span. And to put that in perspective, a goldfish is at 9 seconds. So our attention span is worse than a goldfish right now due to constantly being bombarded in technology. Work is hurting us as well. So not only our technology, but our jobs are hurting us. The compounding stress from never-ending days is really affecting us as people. It's hurting our relationships with our loved ones. It's harming our health. And most definitely, it's affecting our overall happiness. Do you know studies have shown that stress at work can be as dangerous as secondhand smoke, right? Listen to this. The odds of having a doctor diagnose illness is 35% higher if you're chronically stressed at work. Not only that, but research has shown that the long hours at work increase the chances of an early death by 20%. That's scary, right? And also long-term effects include anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, insomnia, a weakened immune system. Compromising your health is not worth any job. So that's a lot of really negative stuff, right? But let's spin it now and figure out how we can do better, how we can really take steps to get out of this zone where we're constantly stressed, where we're anxious, where we're not sure how to make this life work around us. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. A successful life, listen to this quote, has become a violent enterprise. We make war on our bodies, pushing them beyond their limits, war on our children, because we cannot find time to be with them when they're hurt and afraid and they need our company. War on our spirit because we're too preoccupied to listen to the quiet voices that seek to nourish and refresh us. War on our communities because we're fearfully protecting what we have and do not feel safe enough to be kind or generous. War on the earth because we cannot take the time to place our feet on the ground and allow it to feed us, taste its blessings, and give thanks. I don't know, that paints a pretty grim picture about what's going on with work and life and balance. And it begs the question, so what is it that we really, really want?
And I think that's really a great question. And I think you guys have already answered that. Really, what we want is a life that's peaceful, a life where we can experience deep fulfillment and purpose, a life with less stress, a life where wherever we are, we can feel more fully engaged with life in whatever environment or conversation or experience we find ourselves in. I think that's what we really want. So with the time that we have left, let's figure out how we do that. And I'm not talking as much about balance here as we are talking about strategies that help us move closer to a life that's more characterized by peace, purposefulness, deep engagement, enjoyment, satisfaction. I know when you hear those terms, it almost seems like that's a pipe dream. that's impossible to experience that. But I would push against that and say it's not, if we're willing to make some hard choices. So just let's talk about several solutions that Paul talked about. The first is admit that you are not God and that you have limits. That sounds kind of basic and maybe even kind of funny, but yet how many of us operate off this belief that we can get it all done? And that belief creates unbelievable levels of stress and anxiety, because the reality is I'm not unlimited. We don't have unlimited amounts of time. We have 24 hours. All of us have 24 hours every day. And to me, I always step back and say, this has to be possible because I know people who with 24 hours live lives that are not in a hurry, deeply peaceful, deeply engaged, and deeply purposeful. And I also know people with the same 24 hours who are on the opposite end of that spectrum. And I think people who are engaged and happy and peaceful, they embrace the idea that they have limits. And once I accept the fact that I have limits, I can then step into this next principle of, okay, if I have limits, then I have to figure out what is really most important. If I can't get it all done, trust me, friends, your to-do list is going to always have a to-do list. It will multiply like rabbits, I promise. You know it and I know it. There's always gonna be more. Some of you have already talked about that. You get to the end of the day and you just feel like there's always more, no matter how focused you are at your desk. Some of you have even admitted, I'm more productive than I've ever been. And yet, what do you know? There's always more to do. There will always be more to do. So we have to know what is most important. So when you think about work and you think about home, work life, my personal life, what are we talking about? We're talking about two major boulders, two big time priorities from your life. I think this is funny. When you think about the concept of priorities, do you know that originally there was no plural to this word? This is a 14th century term that simply meant the first or prime thing to be done or noticed. Okay, so if there's more than one, then what do we know? Well, we know that it ceases to be primary. We want to figure out what is most important. How many of you, if you do yoga, just type it in the chat. Just put a yes in there. Any yoga people out there? Okay, we got some people who do yoga. All right, so look at this next picture. You know, it's funny when you look at people doing yoga poses. She got a smile on her face. Just everything awesome, right? How many of you know when you're doing like a yoga pose, like that one there, or crescent pose, or whichever one you can think of? She may look like all peaceful and calm on the outside, but those of you who take yoga, what do you know? You have two legs going in opposite direction. And what do they always tell you? You want to take your front leg and stretch it as far in one direction as you can. Then the other, you want to keep it straight and going as far as you can in the other direction. And what do you know about what's going on with your muscles, especially when you're 54 like me? When you're 54 and you're in like crescent pose, those muscles are going, like they're constantly fighting against each other. So while it looks like you're in balance, what do you have? You have two opposite forces constantly competing for attention. So really what's going on is your body is constantly going in and out of balance. And each one of those extremes is correcting and pushing and working against each other. That is exactly what life is like. You have two things that both compete with one another. And it's impossible. It may sound great and a wonderful idea of this idea of balance, but it's impossible. It's literally impossible, because when you focus on one thing, you can't focus on another. That's just how we're wired. To be deeply engaged in one thing means that I'm not going to be giving my attention to the other. And that is really important. In order for us to do great things in this world, great things at work, great things on a personal level, when we're doing those things, we have to be deeply engaged and focused on those things. So when you think about this concept of balance, really think about it more in terms of what is most important. What are my priorities? And when I start to really drill down on that, then I can focus more inside those areas on the things inside each of those areas that by doing them will make the biggest impact on my life. So here's the question, and this comes from the book called The One Thing. Highly encourage you to get it. The question is, what is the one thing? So let's apply this to work right now. What's the one thing such that by doing it, everything else will become easier or unnecessary? Do you know those elements of your work that have the biggest impact on your role, that have the biggest impact on your team, that bring the biggest return on investment for the work that you do? What is that one thing more than any other? Ask yourself the same thing at a home level. And when you start to do this, what will happen is you'll find that your productivity will increase at work. And when you get more done in less time on the work side, guess what you've created for yourself? More margin and more space on the other side of life, which is the personal side. And what you're doing is you're identifying for yourself very clearly those things that you will give your attention to, that must have your attention more than anything else. The flip of that is, if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to say yes to those one things, I've got to say no to a lot of other things. And the reality is, this is exactly how your brain is designed. We know that there is a way that your brain is designed to function. And when it functions this way, you are in the zone. You do your best work, you're peaceful, you're centered, you're focused, like we all want to be. But there are 3 executive functions that we have to honor if we're going to be in that space. The first is called attending. And you're basically telling your brain, focus on this, pay attention to this. So what mechanism do you have as you plan your days to know what those priorities are, what you will intentionally give more energy to than anything else? Focus on this. The second side of that then is inhibiting. At the same time I'm saying focus on this, I'm telling my brain, ignore that. Do not pay attention to that. These things are they're lesser of importance. They're going to be distracting. They're irrelevant. They may even be destructive. You know, Paul talked a lot about technology. Think about what technology has done to your ability to stay in the zone, to stay focused and peaceful and centered on those most important tasks that you need to do. Think about what texting and direct messaging and emailing and Zoom calls. Think what that has done and how that is interrupting your flow. And when that flow gets interrupted, guess what it does? It takes all that much more time to get back into that state where you're centered and focused again. The amount of time wasted from all those interruptions deeply impacts your ability to get great work done. So you have to know, you have to consciously understand what I will ignore, what I will say no to. Some of us have to develop a better no muscle. And then the third thing is remembering. So remembering is just kind of seeing, it's a running track record of how I'm doing related to attending and inhibiting, where I can do check-ins throughout the day or at the end of every day to say, how did I do? Staying focused on my one thing. And what do I need to do a better job of that tomorrow? Know what's most important. Paulie?
Yeah, let's go back to technology for a second. Our 4th solution is to set technology boundaries. I can't stress this enough. Even when we started recording this webinar, I got 2 text messages, literally, and I'm like looking at my phone. I'm like, I'm busy now, but I was like distracted. I literally had to put my phone in airplane mode because I'd forgot to do that when we started this webinar. We need to set technology boundaries. We need to know when to unplug, when to turn off, when to set in the airplane mode, when to just bury it in a drawer somewhere, because our technology is always competing for our attention. One way we can do that is to maybe delete your work email off your cell phone, so you're not tempted to respond, when you're off the clock. I have a friend who puts his phone to bed every night when he puts his kids to bed, literally in a different room, and says, I'm done for the day. This is my time with my wife. I love that. Probably need to give your colleagues a heads up or some lead time to let them know that these are your plans before you take some drastic action like that. But know that every time you get a ding on your phone, or you open your home screen and you see that little red bubble that says there's a notification about this or this, that notification in your brain sends cortisol, stress hormones, saying that there's something that's undone. And literally, you'll be thinking about it because you have those hormones going through your brain. It's not healthy for you to constantly be on top of your phone. So not only phone, but let's talk about ditching the stuff that really wastes your time. I talked earlier about how we use 705 hours on average on social media. But did you know that the average American watches over 5 hours of TV every single day? 35 hours per week. That adds up a ton. And I'll tell you what, they say that TV is the giant consumer of our free time. And not only that, advertisers know this, right? And what do advertisers do? We see an average of 4,000 ads a day with the attempt of being sold something we need to fulfill us, when sometimes what we really need is to just step away, to unplug from those things, to allocate our time better. We always want the life, but are we willing to live the lifestyle? And sometimes the lifestyle is saying yes to what's most important, turning off those distractions, and moving on to something that matters more. The other night, I decided that I was going to turn the TV off, and my oldest son and we baked a giant chocolate chip cookie cake together. And I'll tell you what, it was a sweet reward to the both of us when it was done, not only in terms of it being awesome to taste, but that time spent together was better than just our eyes being glued to television watching something that was trying to make us laugh. So we can set time boxes on our technology. If you're going to check it, tell yourself when you're going to check it. Put your phone to bed, turn it off. Know when it's time to step away from the technology and step into that moment that you'll never be able to get back with your friend, with your family member, with that person who really makes a difference in your life. It's a healthy way to live. And speaking about health, I'm going to turn it back over to Bill.
Yeah, so just one thought on that. I mean, we talk a lot about this in our Eliminating Procrastination course. Actually, some of you on the call have been part of that course. And we don't have time to go into it today. We do a deep dive into actually how to develop priorities in that course. But just a quick mention, this is what I use. This is my tool. And every night before I go to bed, I'll spend 10 minutes. And I literally script out. I get up about 5 because that's time I feel like that's my steal time. That's before the world wakes up. And I script out my first 2 hours, literally scripted out exactly what I'm going to do. So before I even go to bed, I have an intention that I set for myself for the next day of how I will choose to invest that day, identifying what's most important, which starts on Sunday, and then building that out in my daily schedule. And then I can lead my life rather than reacting to life. I tell myself, this is what I'm going to do. And for me, just writing that out, I create the best accountability relationship with myself that is possible. And it makes a massive difference on not allowing myself to get sidetracked by what could be 1,000 other things. But yeah, let's talk about this solution 5 of paying attention to your health. For many of us, we need to pay attention to our health because and I know when you feel better, you have more energy, you can feel engaged and fully focused mentally spiritually, emotionally, physically. And when you don't, we also know that affects every area of our life. It just drains us of energy. Paul just talked about people spending on an average 5 hours a day in front of the TV. What would happen if we traded some of that time for sleep? One of the things that we need is better sleep. We need better. You think about, studies have been done on this. Like, when people don't get adequate levels of sleep, your brain functions in a similar way to when you're intoxicated. Like, your ability to focus is significantly impaired. How about exercise? What are we doing to make sure that we're just getting exercise? And, I'm the kind of guy who, like, I don't love to work out. I value what working out brings, the results that it creates, but some people just love it. They just can't wait. I'm not one of those guys. So for those of you who may be kind of in that space like me, find something that you can, attach exercise to the things that you can enjoy. One of the things, we have a 103-pound German Shepherd. And I'm going to tell you what a great accountability partner. Merrick will be walked every day, or he will drive me utterly insane. So it's amazing, like, just having him. I take a lot more walks. I take pretty much daily walks just because of him in my life. I have a great partner in my spouse who helps me stay accountable to our fitness goals. So she's like my workout buddy. And I don't know what I would do without Moe. She's passionate about it. And, those moments when I don't feel like it, she really encourages me. So we do it. We do our working out together in the evening before dinner, right after work. And I kind of have somebody that'll encourage me to do that. So maybe you just need a peak performance partner. And then creating space that encourages that. So we created a whole area in our basement that just kind of, when you walk into it, it kind of inspires you. It's got all the tools there. We have programs that we use from Beachbody, and they're great because I don't have to think about what I'm going to do when I do a workout. I just push play and it tells me what I'm doing. So it just makes it that much easier. And I know when I'm feeling better, when I'm exercising, I'm encouraged to eat better. I get better sleep. And when I do that, I feel better. And then on the other side of sleep, the only other thing I would say is, and this is why I'm a big fan of starting your mornings out right. Maybe you're not a morning person, maybe you're a night owl. Finding space in your calendar where you can just have time for reflection and meditation. When I script out my mornings and I have that hour and a half to 2 hours before things really hit, I'm so much more peaceful and centered. And my day always starts with a series of spiritual practices, from memorizing scripture to meditating to doing daily affirmations to journaling. And I don't like to journal. So I got something that would really help me. It's called a 5-minute journal. And it's literally a little 5-minute process that's very intentional that walks me through what are the 3 things you're grateful for today? And what that does, that creates a mindset of gratitude. And that starts to fill your mind with more of a positive, hopeful, grateful sort of perspective on life. And then what would make today great? So now you start to think intentionally about what 3 things could I do today that if I did them and I got to the end of the day, I would feel like this is a great day. What am I doing? I'm allowing my brain to attend to what is most important. And then a little section for daily affirmations. And then when you get to the end of the day, you get to come back and say, hey, 3 amazing things that happened today. And what could I have done to make today better? When you create space for those disciplines, it makes a massive difference on your mental, spiritual, emotional state. You show up more peaceful, more centered, more engaged, and more settled. And to me, that just carries a momentum for me throughout the remainder of my day. Let's talk about one more solution. And let me just stop real quick. We got a couple minutes here. You guys haven't had a chance to respond. What's going on inside your minds? What's resonating with you? What thoughts do you have at this point about some of what we shared so far? What do you like? What are you challenged about?
I think it's all great in theory. It's just hard to put into practice. Like the technology one I think is a great idea. I think about when I go on vacation, it's great to just get away and forget about work. But doesn't really happen. I'm thinking about, especially halfway through or something, I'm thinking about what's happening when I go back. So if I see technology and I get back to work, I'm going to be piled with emails and all sorts of stuff. So I think it helps my stress level to be a little bit connected, so I'm not overwhelmed when I get back to the office.
Gotcha. So it doesn't pile up for you, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great stuff. I appreciate that. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Carrie.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
Well, I was thinking, I mean, my wheels were really spinning about the pick something that would help make everything else easier. And it's well, what the one thing, but one thing that came to me was like with emails, just maybe more rules. So I'm not constantly, just like, so I had one idea and it was like, I didn't think I would be able to think of anything. So I'm hoping I can think of more ideas to help make things easier, less burdensome.
That's great. That one thing could be, and we're going to have this question at the end, just setting aside 30 minutes to figure out how you could create a more efficient workspace for yourself. What would it look like to create some boundaries around email of like when you will check it and when you won't check it? What would it look like to put some autoresponders in your email such that you teach other people? Because what do we know about people who send email? Everything that people send to you is an absolute on fire emergency and they need an answer now, right? So we allow ourselves to, it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog thing. And what we're dealing with other people without boundaries in their own life. We're dealing with other people who don't have healthy boundaries. And what are they doing? They're transgressing our boundaries to meet their needs. When in fact, some of the best thing we could do is teach them what boundaries look like by saying, hey, I'm going to respond to this. This is when I respond to email. And you're teaching them that there's a time when you do this, but guess what? You have other things that you need to get done in your schedule, and those are important. When you start to do that, the world kind of settles down just a little bit. And I think one of the really important things to understand on this is how many of us, because we aren't totally focused at work when we're at work, and we're not totally focused at home when we're at home, how many of us when we're at work, we feel guilty about things we're not doing at home? And our mind is off of our work and we're thinking about home. And then when we go home, where's our mind? My mind is at work and I feel like there's something I should be getting done, so I'm not fully engaged with my kids. So I'm not present to wherever I am in life. And think about the life that's robbing from me. That it's what it's robbing from me and the relationships I could have with coworkers, with my kids, with my spouse, by virtue of just and being able to feel great about I was focused at work. And at the end of the day, I looked back and said, man, I got great work done. Rather than how many of us feel like we get to the end of the day and we think, oh my gosh, I was busy, but what in the world did I accomplish today? Anybody ever feel like that at the end of the day? It's because we haven't been able to create these priority areas. We haven't been able to say, you know what? I'm going to ignore this consciously and focus on this right now. And if I do that, it's going to help me be that much more productive and give me that much more space to engage at home when I go home. Solution number 6 is to live in your sweet spot. This is really interesting. Trying to think of I was listening to a podcast. Oh gosh, Paul, you remember the name of the guy I was telling you about? Very popular.
Jocko Willink?
No, not Jocko Willink. It was he has a podcast called Work Life. He's a really well-known business psychologist, but it doesn't matter. One of the things he was talking about was people talk a lot about how working too many hours creates a lot of stress and unhealthiness in people's lives. Adam Grant. And Adam was saying that it's not so much that. He said, he said, I'm a workaholic, but he said, I love what I do, and what I do energizes me. He said, it'd be like how much people love to go watch a movie and how much enjoyment they get from watching a movie. He said, telling me to not do as much work is like telling somebody, don't go and enjoy that movie because you get too much enjoyment out of that. He said, really the bigger issue is people who are working tons of hours in work that doesn't reflect who they were made to be. So they're giving, I always tell people all the time, be careful what you do in your job, because you're trading 2/3 of your conscious waking life for this thing you call your job. What is your time? Your life is your time. So if you think about your job, you're going to consciously trade 2/3 of your life for your vocation. And I always encourage people, there's work out there that fits how you were designed, how you were gifted, what you enjoy, what you're good at. And find work that reflects how you were created, how you were wired, what you love. Because when you can get into those spaces where you do your best work, where you're in the zone, where you find your sweet spot, you'll be much more happier and engaged in those moments. And then you can get to the end of the day and feel very fulfilled and walk away from that and enter your home environment a happier, more fulfilled human that now enters your family environment ready to engage with the people that you love the most. Polly?
Bill, I was going to piggyback on that, because you do work harder when you have that sense of balance. There was a study done by the Corporate Executive Board, which represents 80% of the Fortune 500 companies. And they found that employees who felt like they had a good work-life balance, they actually work 21% harder than those who don't. And I was just reading a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. They said that the productivity levels by someone who works at 55 hours and someone who works at 70 hours are actually the same. Like after 55 hours, you don't get more productive. So when we try to do more and do more and more in the name of productivity, we don't become more productive. But that statistic points to the fact that when we can honor our priorities, when we do have that sense of balance or counterbalance, then we actually work more productive. That's one of those benefits of balance. And there's another one as well, not just for being an employee, but for being an employer. There's a decrease in employee turnover for people who have a work-life balance. Now check this out. One study found that more than 1 in 4 employees at organizations who perceived no support for work-life balance plan to leave their job within the next 2 years. And for workers who felt like their employer did have a sense of balance, it was only 17% planned on leaving, or 8% fewer. And if you think about the cost of turnover, most statistics say that it's half time or 2 times employees' annual salary. And that's a conservative estimate. So the turnover cost is huge to your business. So when you consider work-life balance, not only are you becoming more productive, but as an employer, you're actually saving your company a ton of money because you're making an environment where people actually want to work in. So if you are an employer, what can you do to bring some sort of work-life balance? There's all
think-
kinds of ideas.
And I think if you are an employer or if you lead a team, you know, one thing you can do is creating time blocks where people on your team or in your organization, where it's understood that during certain blocks of time, no one is being interrupted. Emails aren't being sent, direct messages aren't being sent, and all of us are protecting each other's time, blocks of time, to get our most important tasks done so we can be in the flow. You can offer flexible or alternative, hours. Some organizations allow their employees to work 4 10-hour days so they can have, a 3-day weekend, or giving people the opportunity to start earlier and get their work done so that they can leave earlier, allowing people to work from home if appropriate, or offering more time off. If people can do their jobs and still get more time away, that allows them to engage in areas that are really important to them on a personal front, they're going to be better employees. They're going to show up and do better work. They're going to appreciate the fact that you care about them, that you understand their needs, and they're going to be better, more engaged people at work when they're there, providing childcare options if possible. There's just a lot of different creative ways to support people in this endeavor, because we know just from what was shared earlier in the call, the work from home environment itself creates a whole new dynamic on our lives and with respect to our time and how we balance these responsibilities.
I love it. And maybe you're on the flip of that. Maybe you're an employee and you're looking for a job. Those are things that you can keep your ear open throughout the interview process. What's their view on work from home, or, how flexible are the hours? Maybe even chat directly with the employees if you have that opportunity before accepting a job. Is it a family-friendly culture? Are there daycare benefits? What if I have to request time off to take my kid to school? Is that permitted? The main thing is taking time back to step 2 to identify what those priorities in your life are and see if this job aligns with your values and priorities. And, maybe it makes sense in this season to take a lower paying job that's closer to the school that your kids go to or the daycare that's nearby. So those are all things to consider if potentially you're in the job market, or if you're a parent like me, what are some things you can do? Well, bring your kids to the job every once in a while. Let them see what you do. Show them the pictures you put on the wall that they drew. So it lets them see that you're thinking about them during the day. Or if you're working from home, let them know when you need clear boundaries to not be interrupted. Invite them into that process when you don't need those boundaries, and show them that this is how you work. You're modeling health in one way or another to your kids when you're showing them how you work as well. The big thing is, we promised 5 steps. We gave you 6, and you can't do all of them. The majority of New Year's resolutions fail within the first 10 days. And I say that not because I want to be discouraging, but to say that I don't want our attempt at balance to fail. What I do want is for us to pick one step, maybe one idea, and to start small, and then to keep growing that. Because I think as we do that, we'll achieve that counterbalance that we're all looking for. And there's one last thing that Bill wants to share too. I know we're going a little bit over.
Yeah, and I want to just think about this one last concept, and that is that less is more. I want to go back to those questions. So think about these 3 questions as we close. These are just kind of some coaching questions. And I put in the chat, Jen said, I'm with Mark. This all sounds great, but I struggle with how to get started and not losing the motivation. And like another person said, I didn't know where to get started. I'm just going to throw this out. We always offer a complimentary one-on-one coaching session. for anyone so that they can experience coaching. There's a ton of value in it. There's no cost to you except for your time. And if you're feeling like, man, I don't even know where the first place to start, I encourage you to go to our website at billcoxcoaching.com and schedule, a 40-minute one-to-one coaching session to help put together a strategy for how to get started in this process. But just these last 3 questions, what's the one solution that would make the biggest difference for you right now? Let your brain focus. Just pick one of the 6. Which one? Then of that, when you think about that particular solution, what's the one thing you can do this week to put that solution to work? One specific action you can measure that's time bound, which leads to this 3rd question: when will you do it? If you can answer those 3 questions, you'll take a step toward becoming more peaceful, centered, and in the flow. It is absolutely possible, but no one else is going to lead your life but you, and you have to take that first step. Polly?
Awesome. Well, we've gone about 4 minutes over, and we're so thankful that you've joined us today. We hope it's been helpful. We try to do a webinar each and every month. And if you're not part of the newsletter, go to billcoxcoaching.com, sign up. We always preview our webinars 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And so next month we'll be doing another one. And a lot of times what we talk about the following webinar comes right out of some of the issues that people are wrestling with from the previous month's webinars. So your input is so valuable to us, and we're so thankful for your participation. And we hope it's been a valuable time for you as well. And we'll stick around for a few more minutes. If you have any questions or if you want to chat with anything, just feel free to hang out with us. And if not, I want to honor your time and say thanks for joining us today. So
thank you, everybody. Any final questions or thoughts for us? For those of you who are still on the line?
Listen, Gary, I just want to say thank you. This was helpful. I have to run to the kids' school now. That was my lunch break, work in the morning, going to school, and hopefully maybe this evening I will, instead of watching Netflix, I will sit down and think about this stuff.
There you go. That would be a great next step, Carrie. Thank
Yeah.
you for being on the call.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
Take
day.
care.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, the one that stuck out to me was the journaling. I struggle with journaling as well. I normally think of it as a long process of like deep thought, digging into a topic or whatever. But I like the idea of just the kind of quick hitter. What does success look like? And then at the end of the day, did you do those things? And even if some other things happened that weren't great or whatever, you can say like, hey, I got the 3 things done that I wanted to, and kind of call that a win. Start redefining success for the day by that. So that was very helpful. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome, man. And if you were to get that, you just Google the 5-minute journal. It'll come right up. You can get it on Amazon, whatever. It's designed to kind of in harmony with how your brain's designed. They even explain that on the front end.
Okay.
So it's simple to do. I'm big on picking steps that are sustainable, doable, and that actually make a real difference. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that, John.
Okay. No, sounds good. Will do. Yeah. Thank you,
my friend.
All right. Yep.
Have a great day,
Take care,
buddy.
guys. You too.
John.
Bye.
Hey, thanks again for watching today's video. And before you go to the bottom of the screen, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you go to billcoxcoaching.com, sign up for our regular newsletter to help you move from success to significance and lead your life in such a way that you live a legacy. Have a great day.